The Multiverse. Let's talk about it. Hello guys, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk About It. On today's episode, I wanted to talk about the subject of the multiverse, or parallel universes, alternate dimensions, however you'd like to word it. So the basic theory of the multiverse is that our universe sits alongside an infinite amount of alternate universes. I kind of like to think of it as being like a bag of marbles, a really big bag of marbles. All the marbles in there are the same, but there's little differences to them. And whilst the idea of a multiverse is something in science fiction, there are real scientists that do research into subjects, trying to find out if it's real, how it could be real, how we could discover these places. And in doing my research, I discovered a lot of stories online about people that had visited or been visited by people from alternate universes. But there are two in particular that I wanted to share with you. So the first one is called The Green Children of Woolpit. And as this story goes, at some point in the 12th century, two young children, a boy and a girl, were found wandering around the Suffolk village of Woolpit in the UK. Now, on discovering these children, a brother and a sister, the villagers were very confused about how they got there, who they were. They didn't understand why there was no adults with them. The whole thing was very strange. Now, whilst it's not strange for children to get lost, to go missing, to be found somewhere else, what was strange was that firstly the children were wearing clothes that the villagers didn't recognise. They weren't material that they necessarily recognised or a style that they knew about. They were just very strange garments they had on. The children also refused any food and drink they were offered and would only eat raw broad beans. They spoke a language that the villagers didn't understand, and strangest of all, the children both had green-hued skin. Now then, the villagers took the children in and looked after them, firstly in the hope that somebody would come looking for them, a parent, a guardian, whoever. And secondly, despite how they looked, the people of Woolpit weren't about to send two vulnerable children out on their own to fend for themselves. They weren't prepared to do that. And over time, the children became part of Woolpit. They became part of the society there. Now, at some point, the younger of the siblings, the brother, became ill and he passed away. So his sister was left on her own effectively. But she thrived, and she eventually got a job and made more friends and contributed to life in Woolpit. And more importantly, her English became very, very good. Good enough, in fact, that she was able to explain to the people of Woolpit where she'd come from. And as her story goes, her and her now deceased brother were from a place called St. Martin's Land. And in St. Martin's Land, there is no sun, it is always twilight, and everything is a shade of green. And while she has vivid memories of that part of her life, she was struggling to recount exactly how her and her brother had gone from that green-hued world and ended up in Suffolk, UK. But what she could remember was that her and her brother had followed a herd of cattle into a cave, and on entering the cave and coming out the other side of it, they found themselves in Woolpit, which is when the villagers found them. And so the theory goes that when they entered the cave, they had actually entered a wormhole into an alternate universe, that universe being our own. The second story is called The Man from Taured. So at some time in the late 1950s, a businessman was stopped at a passport checkpoint in Japan. He handed over his passport, some documents, some information, and the officers in charge, as was procedure, went over these documents. So at first glance, all seemed fine. He had a passport, they saw lots of different passports from all over the world. He had documents all written out neatly, easy to read and understand. But on closer inspection, they realised that his passport was from a country called Taured that didn't exist. When they confronted the man about having what they believed to be a fake passport, he told them, no, I'm from the country of Taured, just get me a map. They got him a map, and the man became very upset and confused and angry when he realised that his home country of Taured was not on this map. And in its place, where it should be, was the country of Andorra. So with this confusion, the Japanese authorities went through documentation and they soon realised that he had bank details from a bank that didn't exist, and he had a list of contact information for hotels and business premises, places he planned to do business with on his travels to Japan. So the authorities called up these numbers. Now, whilst all of these numbers worked, nobody that picked up the phone had any clue as to who this man was. They had no meeting scheduled with him, they had no prior knowledge of him, there was nothing to confirm who he was or what he was doing. So the man was arrested for having false documents effectively. And he was taken to a hotel, put in a room on the 7th floor, which was locked and kept under armed guard. And after a period of time, the guards entered the room to take the man out again. But when they got in there, he was gone. There was no trace of him. He had disappeared. And not only had he disappeared, but all of his documents that the passport authority had also vanished. And so it is believed that, unbeknownst to him, the man had slipped through a wormhole which had brought him from his universe into the 1950s Japan of our universe. So whilst these are both stories of people from other worlds, other dimensions that have visited our universe, it makes me wonder about people that have possibly travelled from our universe into another dimension. And so that got me thinking about heaven and hell in their many forms, in many religious texts, that possibly these are alternate dimensions. So for example, heaven could be a world that is covered in clouds and people have developed wings and it's dominated by giant beings that control everything we do. So hell, as another example, could be a world of constant darkness and fire, and the people there have developed very tough, dark skin and they're hairless and they've got long claws and they're very monstrous looking. It could be possible that people that claim to have seen heaven and hell, the people that wrote this stuff down in books, had slipped through wormholes and found themselves in these alternate dimensions of what we know to be heaven and hell, and then come back again. It's just a theory, but I thought it was quite an interesting one. And on the subject of the afterlife, there's other theories out there that possibly what people perceive to be ghosts, people walking through walls and people appearing and disappearing at will. I think we all know what ghosts are. The theory goes that this is actually alternate universes merging in and out of each other, where they're crossing over. So we're seeing into another dimension effectively, or into a parallel universe, and they're seeing the same for us. Which again, if we're going to have an open mind to this kind of thing, yeah, why not? Why couldn't that be universes crossing over just for a brief moment? It's quite possible. And then you get onto the subject of not just one person experiencing an alternate universe, it's many people having a shared experience of a multiverse. And the best example of that is something called the Mandela Effect. So the Mandela Effect came about in 2013 after the death of Nelson Mandela. But when the news broke of Nelson Mandela's death, millions of people from all over the world had a distinct memory that he had died in prison in the 1980s and they had watched his funeral on the television. And it wasn't just a handful of people from the same community thinking the same thing. It was people from all over the world, from all different walks of life, who have a distinct memory of Nelson Mandela having passed away in the 1980s. Now, I know that a lot of this information has no evidence, they're just stories effectively, but it does make you think that it would be equally as incredible as it would be terrifying to see yourself in an alternate universe, to see worlds that have a different history to our own, to see places that have been set on a different path to what we know. Are they more advanced than us? Are they less advanced than us? Do they look different? It would just be an incredible thing to be able to see these places, this infinite amount of parallel universes, just to experience it. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video today. If you have any comments, of course, let me know them below. Otherwise, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.